More than 300,000 jobs were added to the U.S. economy in March, vastly exceeding expectations and bringing the total number of jobs created under President Biden to more than 15 million. And the Fox propaganda network is pretty miserable while reporting it, and some of them are bending over backwards to give Trump the credit instead of Biden. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and the alert bell before you go. I'd greatly appreciate it. All right, friends, we have several clips to look at in this video. This is basically a recurring theme of the Pondering Politics channel and really the Biden administration as a whole, because a recurring theme of the Biden administration are blockbuster jobs reports, which very often exceed expectations. And the Fox propaganda network, which is obviously ideologically predisposed to hate Biden and support Donald Trump, they report on it, and they are visibly miserable when doing so and bend over backwards to either not credit Biden at all or to actually go out of their way and give credit to Donald Trump instead. So we're going to play some clips, just see it on their faces, see the misery, see the reluctance, hear it in their tone of voice. And then towards the end, I'll give you a particularly shameless example in which yet another Fox propagandist is again trying to give Donald Trump the credit, even though he's out of office.
Yes, it is Jobs Day, and here are the numbers. In March, a big number, 303,000 jobs were added to the economy, and the unemployment rate actually moved down to 3.8%. Hourly income up a sharp 0.3%. I'm going to characterize this as a very strong report.
As a very strong report, so says Stuart Varney. We've got another clip here.
Your reaction to this jobs report?
Very good, Maria. The household employment was actually up almost 500,000. The unemployment rate fell. The work week was stable. It looks really good right now. Certainly better than consensus expectations.
Consensus expectation, particularly on the Fox propaganda network. And I want you to note the guy on the bottom here, this guy with the glasses and the green tie. His name is Steve Moore, and he's going to be a recurring figure, particularly at the end. Note the misery, the stone faces as this is being reported as well. Let's see, we got another clip.
That Trump is in the lead, I think, in 4 of the 5 key battleground states. I just wonder how much.
Yeah, 6 out of 7.
6 out of 7. I just wonder if maybe the market is pricing in a little bit, and employers too, the idea that maybe we're going to get a new president in November.
We'll see. Does that work into your looking at markets, the idea that we could see policy changes next year? What do you think, Bob Dahl?
Yeah, it has to. The policy differentials between these two guys is pretty significant.
Even if that's the case, Donald Trump is not president. So why would we be assuming that they're taking a bet that the polls are tight between Donald Trump and President Biden, and Donald Trump is not in office. The election hasn't happened. It won't happen for another 7 months. And then there's like an additional 2 or 3 months before inauguration. On what basis are you assuming that the market is factoring in the idea that Donald Trump will be president based on an election he hasn't won that's 7 months out, and based on policies that he may or may not have and may or may not implement? You see how they're bending over backwards to do so. Donald Trump himself did this during recent reports within the past few months. He went on the Fox propaganda network and otherwise, the economy, the markets are doing well, but to the extent they're doing well, it's because they predict that I'll win the election. And you also have Larry Kudlow, another Fox News personality, who has been peddling this notion. He'll say, it's just me speculating. I'm not giving Trump the credit. I'm just saying it's possible. And then you have this guy, Stephen Moore, the one who just talked. Maybe the markets are pricing it in. So he works for the Wall Street Journal. He works for the Heritage Foundation, and he's allegedly an economist, okay? And he's over here. He has a book called Trumponomics, an incredible book on my economic policies. And that's an endorsement from Donald Trump. Now, the reason I'm bringing him up is because in addition to the very stupid and disingenuous thing he did there, which was to try to give somebody who's not in office credit for the economy under a guy who's in office, who he obviously doesn't like, he also did this recently too. This is a post he made on Twitter. The Trump versus Biden income showdown. Under Trump, households saw a $6,000 rise. Under Biden, households have experienced a $2,000 fall. That's an $8,000 yearly difference. Remember this when you vote. Sounds like a really sobering statistic. It's even got a smiling Trump here. I don't know if you notice, and like a shocked Biden face. Ooh, and a blue line for for Trump going upwards and a really aggressive red line going down for Biden. Wow, that looks really bad. Except it got community noted. These graphs are misleading. The Trump graph omits 2020 data, which would show a steep decline due to the pandemic. The two graphs do not use the same y-axis. Trump graph uses income in dollars, while Biden graph uses percentage changes. No sources are provided. It's so bad and it's so dishonest that even Frank Luntz, and we'll get to Frank Luntz in a minute, a prominent Republican strategist and pollster who doesn't like Donald Trump, I might add, but also hates Biden, hates the Democrats, and grades Republicans on a curve, even he took the time to fact check sarcastically Stephen Moore. Why is 2020 missing from this graph? Thinking emoji. And Frank Luntz was the guy, by the way, who had to recently take a giant public L in an attempt to show disdain for President Biden, to talk smack about the Biden campaign. He says it's Biden's first Wisconsin appearance in 2 years. So why is Joe Biden going to a predominantly white Green Bay rather than the more racially diverse Milwaukee or college town Madison? And he got fact checked. It's actually Biden's 10th trip to Wisconsin as president and 3rd this year. He was in Milwaukee 3 weeks ago and has announced a trip to Madison on Monday. He got raked over the coals for this, and then several days later finally made a public apology. So Frank Luntz is no stranger to being fact-checked in his zeal to grade Republicans on a curve and attack Democrats. And even he felt that this by Stephen Moore was so egregious that it merited addressing. But we know why Stephen Moore and the Fox Propaganda Network and the Trump campaign try to forget about 2020. It's why stupidly they're running on this idea, were you better off 4 years ago than you are now? It's because they don't understand how time works. They may have believed their own lies. They forget that 4 years ago was 2020, which was an absolute disaster of a year by any objective metric, far worse than any under the Biden administration. And Donald Trump was president. Crime spiked in 2020 under Donald Trump. COVID occurred and the mismanagement of COVID under the Trump administration, which led to more than 1 million deaths total. And Donald Trump's own COVID expert, his own COVID advisor, Dr. Deborah Birx, blamed the Trump administration and its mismanagement of COVID for the vast majority of the deaths. All of that happened under Donald Trump, and the economy went into the crapper as a result. Unemployment skyrocketed. I mean, grocery stores were running out of supplies. We couldn't get toilet paper. That all happened on Donald Trump's watch. So what do Republicans do? Well, they want you to believe that 2020 is either a mulligan, Trump shouldn't be blamed for any of it, or actually Joe Biden was president, even though he wasn't, but he was basically president, or 2020 just didn't happen. And now they're even doing it with aspects of the economy because they're so desperate to pretend that the economy was better under Trump, and then also for Trump-related reasons, than under Biden. Well, I just bring this up to show how Stephen Moore is dishonest, right? And so when he says, actually, this jobs report, we should probably give Trump some of the credit or all the credit, really all the credit, because the market's pricing in the idea that in 7 months, he'll win a neck-and-neck election and then be inaugurated 2 months later, and then he'll pass policies immediately that we think he has, but actually don't know. The market right now in March, really, because this is the March jobs report, it's factoring all that in. Folks, this is absolutely insane. It just goes to show how dishonest the MAGA cult is and how miserable the Fox Propaganda Network is consistently at reporting a strong economy under President Biden. Again, note that they go out of their way to even avoid mentioning the guy's name. You know that's not the case if Trump were in office with this economy. They would add Trump at the beginning. Trump would be the preamble and the conclusion to every sentence. Trump, blah, 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 verb, noun, whatever adjective. And then they would end with Trump, period. That's because they grade these two men on a scale. But the fact of the matter is, by all macroeconomic metrics, or that at least the vast majority of them, the economy is doing better under President Biden. We can actually point to things that Biden has done to help make the economy better. Whereas Donald Trump inherited a really good economy from President Obama. And most of his successes were mere continuations of Obama-era trends. So I'm not exactly sure why I should give him credit for that. And certainly when Obama did the lion's share was done under Obama. And all of this goes to show, as a reminder, modern American history is terrible economic things happening under Republicans, Democrats being elected, cleaning up the mess. 10 out of the last 11 recessions began under Republican presidencies. 10 out of the last 11. And then a Democrat has to come in and clean up the mess. So, yeah, Biden gets the credit. Democrats get the credit. It's a good day for Americans and a bad day for Republicans and the Fox Propaganda Network and loser, biased, partisan, in the worst possible way, MAGA cultists like Stephen Moore. Let me know what you think in the comments.